power found. Good sight, which is right. Merry men enjoy to night. Sacred ground, newly found. Witness to the power found. Good sight, which is right. Merry men enjoy to night. Sacred ground, newly found. Witness to the power found. Good sight, which is right. Merry men enjoy to night. Sacred ground, newly found. Witness to the power found.
Descend, my lady, and speak with us, thy children.
I am she who watches over thee, mother of you all. Know that I rejoice that you do not forget me. Know that with my good Lord I weave the skein of life for each and every one of you. I am love and I am life. Find me and rejoice, for love is my music and laughter is my song.
Witchcraft. The very word in the minds of some people conjures up thoughts of Satan worship, of wild rides through the air astride broomsticks, of figures huddled around bubbling cauldrons. Few people realize the truth, that witchcraft is in fact a religion, a valid, federally recognized alternate religion, with ancient roots that not only expressly forbids its followers from harming others, but does not even believe in Satan. Hello. My name is Raymond Buckland, and I would like to take you on an historical journey. A journey starting back in Paleolithic times and coming forward through to the present day. I'd like to show you the beginnings of religion and of magic. One form of religion was to develop into what today has become Wicca. With this development, you will see how so many misconceptions regarding witchcraft came about. We start our journey 25,000 years ago, at a time when humankind had a belief in animism. It was then thought that a god controlled the gusting wind, a god lived in the raging river, a god controlled the sky. But most importantly, so far as day-to-day existence was concerned, that there was a god of hunting and a goddess of fertility. Since most of the animals hunted were horned animals, so it was thought the god of hunting was a horned god. And since it was the woman who was visibly connected with birth, so it was logical that it be a goddess rather than a god of fertility. These two, the god of hunting and the goddess of fertility, were the two most important deities for early human existence. Along with these early steps of religion, we find the beginnings of magic. Magic of the sympathetic variety. In other words, the belief that like attracts like. Let's look first at hunting. The early tribe would act out a hunt before ever starting off on the real thing. They would make a life-size clay model of a bison or bear or whatever they planned to hunt. One of their number would then play the part of the god, dressed in skins and wearing horns or antlers if necessary, and he would direct the others. They would attack the clay model with spears and javelins. When they felt they had successfully killed the animal, they would leave on the real hunt, confident that they would there be equally successful. The same type of magic was done for fertility. Clay models were made of animals copulating, and the tribe would also join together in an accompanying ritual. This, they felt, would ensure a plentiful supply of food and continuation of the tribe. It's interesting that this same type of magic has continued right through virtually to the present day. American Indians, until relatively recent times, performed these self-same hunting rituals to bring themselves success. The Penobscots and the Mandans are excellent examples of this. With the later development of agriculture and the resultant storing of grown food for the winter, the hunting god became less important. But the goddess's role was still valid, if not more so, since she now ruled over the fertility of the fields as well as that of humans and animals. In early figures of the goddess, original emphasis was placed on the feminine attributes, almost to the exclusion of face, arms, and legs. There were heavy, pendulous breasts, a swollen stomach as though pregnant, and enlarged genitalia. But gradually, this changed. Realism slowly came into play. In similar fashion, representations of the god changed. With the decline of the importance of the hunt, he became more a god of nature generally. As such, he was shown with a face made up of leaves, of foliage. Such figures are consequently known by the general term foliate masks, though also often referred to as Jack of the Green or Robin of the Woods. With the development of different rituals for hunting, for fertility, for seasonal needs, there also developed a priesthood, a group of men and women made up of those who seemed especially effective when playing the part of the god or goddess. As man and woman developed and spread across Asia and Europe, these early ideas of the deities were carried along. In different geographical areas, different names would be given to them, but they all stemmed from these same two original concepts of deity. The priesthood, too, developed differently in different areas. It is in Western Europe specifically that we later find the origins of what was to become what we know today as witchcraft. In early England, the ritual leaders were known as the Wicker or Witter, an Anglo-Saxon term for the wise ones. In fact, by the time of the Anglo-Saxon kings in England, the king would never think of acting on any important matter without first consulting the Witan, the Council of Wise Ones. And these community leaders did have to be wise. They were not only the priests to the people, they were also the local doctors, the lawyers, magicians, and leaders in all things. With the coming of Christianity, there was not the immediate mass conversion that is sometimes suggested. The new religion came in fairly slowly. It was, in a sense, a man-made religion and had not evolved slowly and gradually over thousands of years, as had the old religion. Up until about 1000 AD, England and most of Europe was still pretty much half and half Christian and pagan. Christianity came in at the top, as it were. The sovereigns and rulers were converted before ever the common people were. Cities and towns became at least nominally Christian before ever the smaller towns and villages did. The general populace was pagan then. The word pagan comes from the Latin pagani, meaning one who dwells in the country. Similarly, heathen simply means a dweller on the heath. This then was when the appellation of pagan or heathen came to be applied to non-Christians, originally with no connotations of evil or even anti-Christianity. To say that someone was a pagan was simply to say that they lived out of town, out in the country, and it was therefore to imply that they were non-Christian. But after trying for so long to convert the people to the new religion, saturation point was finally reached. No more seemed willing to give up the old gods for the new. So then, pressure started to be applied by the church. Old pagan practices were distorted to make them look unsavory. Traditions were twisted. False accusations were made. For example, there was a time when the tall pointed hat was popular, was the height of fashion. But, as with all styles of dress, it eventually went out of fashion. In those days, it took some considerable time for fads and fashions to seep down from the cities and towns to the outer villages. So many years after the tall hat was démodé in court circles, it was still being worn quite happily by the country people. At this time then, the pagan was depicted wearing a tall pointed hat, as much as to say, see, the old religion is out of fashion, it's behind the times. But most Jabs were far more savage than this. At certain times of the year, the villagers would all go down to the fields, carrying with them pitchforks, long poles, and broomsticks. There they would stand astride their poles, like a child on a hobby horse, and dance around the fields with them. As they danced, they would jump high in the air. They believed that in so doing, they were showing the crops how high to grow. It was simply a form of agricultural magic. The church, in trying to rid the people of their old rites, distorted this. They said, first of all, that the people were doing the ritual to blight the harvest, a ridiculous charge when you consider, because the people had to live off the crops themselves. They further said that they were not only riding their poles around the fields, but were also riding them through the air, which must obviously be the work of the devil. Therefore, you mustn't do it. The cauldron got into the picture about this time. It was purely a household cooking utensil, But a typical church charge against witches was that they used it for boiling up babies to obtain their fat. Along with these children were boiled all sorts of evil-sounding ingredients, such as snake's tongues, cat's eyes, rabbit's feet, wolf's claws, a Negro's head, and flesh and blood. Of course, there were no babies boiled. One wonders where they would have all come from anyway, and why no one missed them. As for the awesome-sounding ingredients, they were simply herbs and plants. Today, all plants have a Latin name, known and used universally. But in the old days, they were only known by somewhat picturesque local ones, names often given according to the look of the plant. Tongue of a snake was adder's tongue, or the dog-tooth violet. Cat's eye was star scabious. Rabbit's foot was field clover. Wolf's claw, lysopodium. Negro head, vegetable ivory, and flesh and blood, tormentil. There were literally hundreds of these herbs, with such colorful local names. Cow's tail, Jew's ear, devil's milk, and similar ones. So things continued for many years, with Christianity trying gradually but surely to ease out the old religion. But the old religion was tenacious. It was ingrained from generation after generation, going back thousands of years. Even some of the new religion's ministers retained much of their old pagan background. Many are the records of priests happily mixing both the old and the new until admonished by their superiors. Finally, however, the church grew impatient. It wanted Wicca dead, and it wanted Christianity to be the only religion. Pope Gregory the Great made tremendous strides by ordering the destruction of ancient temples and the smashing of so-called idols. New churches were built on the old sites so that the church could cash in on the local populace's habit of going to them. Happily, most of the stonemasons and woodcarvers available for building the new churches were themselves pagans. So in the decorations, they incorporated figures of their own old gods. In this way, the people, although forced to attend the churches of the new religion, could still worship the gods of the old. But now the church had declared war on paganism. Anything non-Christian, no matter how morally and ethically good and worthwhile, was immediately labeled anti-Christian, and therefore to be stamped out. The god of the old religion had horns, so apparently had the Christian devil, so the two were equated by the church. As it happens, Wiccans, like virtually all pre-Christians, do not even believe in the devil. The devil, Satan, as an all-evil entity, is a purely Christian invention. There's no mention of him as such in the Bible before the New Testament. The original Old Testament Hebrew, ha-Satan, and the New Testament Greek, diablos, simply meant opponent or adversary. The idea of one all-good God, and therefore the necessary opposite, all-evil entity, was first developed by Zoroaster in Persia in the 7th century BCE. It was later picked up in Mithraism and then in Christianity. But this was a new concept, unknown to the older religions, including Wicca. As a religion in itself, albeit a perverted one, Satanism came into being in the early Middle Ages, and it came about as a protest against the harshness of the church at that time. The ordinary Christian men and women were exhorted to pray to God, yet they found they got nothing in return. The serfs' lot was hard, and they had virtually nothing to call their own. The church governed everything they could do. As an example, sexual intercourse was frowned upon even between married couples. There should be no joy from the act, and it was banned on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. It was also banned from 40 days before Christmas and a similar time before Easter, for 3 days before receiving communion, and from the time of conception to 40 days after parturition. In other words, there was a grand total of only 2 months in the year when a man and wife could have sexual relations, and even then solely for procreation. From such oppression as this, there eventually broke out a rebellion. Finding that they were getting nothing from praying to the so-called good God, some discontents decided to try the other side and pray to the devil instead. So Satanism came into being as a revolt against the church. Its adherents actually found that they got nothing from Satan either, but at least they had the satisfaction of knowing that they were going against the establishment.